For some time now, I've been sort of pressed by the Holy Spirit about beginning to understand and to appreciate the Black Lives Matter movement and idea. And I appreciate there is a difference between Black Lives Matter, the idea, and the movement, especially in America. But I guess I really just want to focus my attention on the Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia and how that impacts me here in Australia and impacts us as a church. And I guess I realised that I really don't know or didn't think I knew any Indigenous people or that I'm closely connected to or know the stories of anybody. But then I realised that we actually have 3 beautiful Indigenous women in our Balmoral campus and an Indigenous man, and who have their own stories and of what it is for them. Some of them were brought up with a knowledge of their Indigenous culture, some of them weren't, and now they're all looking at ways of engaging in that culture and understanding so that they can be justice carriers. And just met with 2 of them recently and had a beautiful time of just hearing their stories and understanding what some of our Indigenous people in Australia are currently, the life that they're living, the story that they're living as a result of what's happened in the centuries that have preceded. I must confess, I'm one of those people who have used the phrase, but don't all lives matter? And right now, I just want to say I'm sorry that what I was doing was I was trying to say that injustice happens to everybody. But in doing that, I inadvertently was saying, I really don't want you to highlight your injustice. And I think what's really important for all us to get hold of is that, yes, all lives do matter. In fact, Jesus throughout his ministry, his attention was on people that the religious people didn't want him to say mattered. He was known for being friends of drunkards, prostitutes, sinners, tax collectors, people who were, unwell, sick, diseased. Jesus said those lives mattered. And I guess for me, Gentile, non-Gentile, Jesus didn't care. But in every moment where he ministered, you see this kind of focus that comes in where he's talking to a Samaritan woman and he goes, Samaritan lives matter. And then he gets placed before a woman caught in adultery, your lives matter. He has a woman of ill repute come and anoint his feet with oil. He goes, you matter. And I guess right now, as in every time we are faced with injustice, is that we need to validate people who come before us, whose injustice is before them, and they're feeling the pain of that injustice, and to acknowledge it by going, your life matters. And right now, I believe that this is a time in our nation where we get to say, yes, Black lives do matter, full stop. And we don't have to justify it by saying, but don't all lives matter. Right now, it's just important to say Black lives matter because so many people who are Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander, from the history of their people and then that whole accumulation of injustice that their people have had and how that affects them today, makes them feel that their life doesn't matter and that then they don't have a voice and that the truth is not told. So for me, I'm on a journey. I haven't learnt it all. I got sent a website that was very helpful called australianstogether.com, and there I learnt some things about history, and I learnt some things by listening to the 2 Indigenous ladies in our Balmoral community, and was blessed by their heart because I think they saw the big picture, but they just had this heart for their people, that they might have a voice and that the truth might be told, and that the Australian people might acknowledge that great injustice has occurred in the past that affects the present, and that we as this generation right now needs to face that injustice that still lingers and still impacts Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders today, and that we can play our part in that. So for me, my journey begins at hearing the stories, looking at history, not from the victor's point of view, but from those people who were invaded, the Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders, and looking at the long-term impact that that's had on their lives, and then joining with them as they work together with us to find a better way forward. And ultimately, as we've been talking about, the truth is that we have to walk closely with compassion, kindness, and understanding, and provide physical help. But ultimately, every person, including Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders, need to hear the good news of Jesus. But sometimes you have to, and most times you actually have to come alongside people, hear their story, so that you might be able to understand and love them where they're at. So that's where I'm up to right now. It's not a completed story, but I hope that helps. And perhaps you could go on your own journey of discovery and begin to put aside some of your preconceived ideas, perhaps prejudices, as I have had to do, and to ask God to give me a soft heart and a heart of justice for those that are a minority, and those who are vulnerable, and those who have been impacted by years and years of injustice.